Every 40 seconds, someone in America has a stroke. That means before this video is over, at least 30 people will have one. And here's the number that should shake you. Up to 30% of those strokes were preceded by a warning, a quiet, temporary signal the brain sent hours or even days earlier. A signal the person felt, dismissed, and forgot. That's nearly 1 in 3 people who had a chance to act, a real, measurable window. And they missed it not because they were careless, but because no one ever told them what those warning signals actually feel like in an ordinary body on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Here's the part that should give you hope. When those early warning signs are recognized and acted on, the risk of a full stroke drops by as much as 80% with timely medical intervention. 80%. That is not a small number. That is the difference between walking into a doctor's office and being carried into an emergency room. Today, I'll show you 7 warning signs your body sends before a stroke. And sign number 1, it lasts less than a minute. And most people blame it on a bad night's sleep. Here's what I'm curious about. Do you know your blood pressure right now? Not last year's number, right now. Type it if you know it. If you don't, that silence in the comments is the most important answer of all, and it might push someone else to finally check theirs. I'm Dr. Walter Pembrook. In 25 years of practice, I've sat across from hundreds of patients in hospital beds who all said some version of the same thing. I felt something, but I didn't think it mattered. Every single one of them had a window, and every single one of them missed it. Today, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen to you. I'll walk you through the 7 specific warning signs your body sends before a stroke, what they feel like, what they mean, and exactly what to do the moment you recognize one. No medical jargon, no vague advice. Just the truth, in plain language, while there's still time to use it. Warning sign number 7, a sudden, unexplained exhaustion that drops on you like a weight you didn't pick up. Here's a number most people have never heard. A study published in the journal Neurology found that sudden unexplained fatigue was reported by a significant number of stroke patients in the 24 to 48 hours before the event. And it was disproportionately common in women who resisted. Not tiredness, not I didn't sleep well, a fatigue so deep and sudden that patients described feeling physically unable to lift their arms or keep their eyes open in the middle of the afternoon. Here's the mechanism. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds, but it burns through roughly 20% of your body's entire oxygen supply. It is, pound for pound, the most energy-demanding organ you own. It pulls energy away from your muscles, your focus, your motivation, and redirects everything to keep its own critical systems running. When blood flow to any region begins to drop because a clot is forming, because an artery is narrowing, your brain doesn't send you a sharp pain. It does something quieter. It starts rationing. Think of it like a house during a brownout. The lights don't go off all at once. First, the air conditioning shuts down. Then the appliances go quiet. The house is still standing, but something is clearly wrong with the power supply. Your body does the same thing, and most people never connect the brownout to the brain. What this feels like, you're sitting in your living room at 2 p.m. on a perfectly normal day, and your body feels like it's been running for 48 hours straight. Your legs are heavy, your arms won't cooperate, you're not sleepy, you shut down. And no amount of rest makes it better. A 2024 observational study in stroke and vascular neurology tracked over 2,000 patients admitted for ischemic stroke and found that those who reported sudden onset fatigue in the days before admission had significantly higher rates of large vessel occlusion, meaning bigger blockages in bigger arteries. The fatigue wasn't random. It was proportional to the threat. If this kind of exhaustion hits you without explanation, you slept well, you're not sick, you didn't overexert yourself, do not let it pass. Call your doctor that same day. Use these words: I'm experiencing sudden unexplained fatigue and I'd like a vascular evaluation. That sentence changes the urgency of how you're treated. Write it down. Keep it near your phone. Now, if that number concerns you, the next warning sign comes with its own data, and it's one your body sends to a system you rely on every time you stand up from a chair. Warning sign number 6, your balance or coordination suddenly fails you, and the numbers behind it are more alarming than most people realize. Research published in the journal Stroke found that sudden onset dizziness and coordination loss were among the most frequently missed pre-stroke symptoms in emergency departments, with nearly 35% of posterior circulation strokes initially misdiagnosed as inner ear problems or benign vertigo, 1 in 3. Sent home with the wrong diagnosis while a blockage quietly progressed in the back of their brain. Here's why that misdiagnosis happens so often. The structure responsible for your balance and coordination is called the cerebellum. It sits at the lower back of your brain, and despite making up only about 10% of your brain's total volume, it contains more than half of all your brain's neurons. It is your body's air traffic control managing every movement you make without you having to think about it. The cerebellum is fed by a dedicated set of arteries, the vertebral and basilar arteries that run through the back of your neck and up into the base of your skull. When blood flow through these arteries drops, even for a few seconds, the result is immediate. Your balance falters, your coordination misfires. You reach for something and miss. You walk a straight line and veer. You stand up and the room tilts like the floor shifted under your feet. And then it stops. Everything rights itself. You sit down, drink some water, and blame it on getting up too fast. That explanation feels reasonable. It is also potentially catastrophic. Here's the clinical distinction I need you to remember. Ordinary dizziness builds gradually. It comes with illness, dehydration, medication, side effects. A vascular event is sudden. It arrives without warning, lasts seconds to minutes, resolves on its own, and critically may appear alongside any of the other signs I'm covering today. That combination is the signature of interrupted blood flow, not an inner ear problem. A patient named Nathaniel Brooks, 72, a retired high school football coach from Memphis, came in for a routine visit and mentioned he'd been missing doorknobs for about 5 days. He grinned when he said it. Thought his depth perception was going. When I ran a CT angiogram, we found a 55% narrowing in his right vertebral artery. 5 days of missed doorknobs. 5 days of warnings he laughed off because they didn't feel serious enough to mention. If you're experiencing sudden, unexplained episodes of imbalance or coordination loss, even if they last only a few seconds, write down every episode. Date, time, duration, what you were doing. That log is clinical evidence. Bring it to your doctor and ask for posterior circulation imaging. Those 3 words tell your doctor exactly where to look. Now, the next warning sign doesn't show up in your legs or your hands. It shows up in the one sense you depend on from the moment you open your eyes each morning, and when it flickers, most people call the wrong doctor. Warning sign number 5, your vision suddenly changes, and the data behind this one should stop every person over 60 inches their tracks. Clinical research shows that temporary vision loss in one eye, a condition called amaurosis fugax, carries a stroke risk of 2 to 5% within the first 48 hours and up to 15% within 90 days if the underlying cause goes unaddressed. That means 1 out of every 6 or 7 people who experience a brief blackout in one eye and do nothing about it will have a stroke within 3 months. Those are not small odds. Those are odds you would never accept in any other area of your life. Here's what's happening. Your visual cortex, the part of your brain that builds everything you see, sits at the very back of your skull. It is fed by the posterior cerebral arteries. When a tiny clot or a fragment of plaque drifts into one of those arteries, even for 10 or 15 seconds, part of your visual field goes dark. It may feel like a curtain dropping over one eye. Half the room disappears. Words on a page dissolve into nothing, or everything doubles and blurs and then snaps back before you can fully react. And here is the mistake that costs people everything. They assume it's an eye problem. They call their optometrist. They schedule an appointment for next month. They wait. And while they wait, the clot source, usually a narrowing in the carotid artery, the major vessel running through your neck, keeps building, keeps narrowing, keeps sending fragments upstream toward the brain. This is not an eye event. This is a brain event. Your eyes are working perfectly. The problem is that the blood supply feeding the part of your brain that processes vision was just interrupted. And calling an eye doctor for a brain blood supply problem is like calling a plumber because your electricity went out. You're solving the wrong problem and you're losing time you don't have. A woman named Gloria Fitzgerald, 73, a retired school principal from Philadelphia, sat across from me and told me something I would carry for the rest of my career. She said that she had been reading her late husband's letters, something she did every Sunday when the right half of the page vanished, just erased. She could see the left side, but the right was gone. It lasted about 40 seconds. Then it came back. She didn't call anyone. She put the letters away and sat quietly in her kitchen for an hour. When I asked her why she waited, her voice broke. Dr. Pembrook, those letters are all I have left of him. And for 40 seconds, I couldn't read his words. I thought God was telling me it was time to let go. It was not time to let go. It was time to act. A carotid Doppler that week revealed a 65% blockage in her right internal carotid artery. Gloria's Sunday morning was a warning, and she almost missed it because the grief was louder than the signal. If you experience any sudden change in your vision, one eye going dark, half your visual field disappearing, blurring, or doubling that resolves on its own, do not call your eye doctor. Call your primary care physician or go to the emergency room. Say these words: I experienced temporary vision loss. I need carotid imaging. This is a brain emergency wearing an eye mask. Do not let it fool you. And that brings us to a warning sign that doesn't strike your body at all. It strikes your voice, the very thing that connects you to every person you love. Before we continue, I want to check in with you. We've covered 4 warning signs so far: fatigue, balance, vision, and what's coming next will hit even closer to home. Here's what I'm curious about. Out of the signs we've covered so far, how many have you personally experienced? Just type the number. 0 is a perfectly good answer. But if your number is 1 or higher, I want you to stay for the next 3 signs, because they're the ones that determine whether what you felt was a coincidence or a countdown. Warning sign number 4. The words inside your head suddenly refuse to come out of your mouth. And the data on this one reveals something most people never hear. Published research on stroke warning signs consistently identifies speech disruption as one of the most underreported symptoms in adults over 50. Not because it's rare, because it's brief. It lasts 30 seconds, maybe 60, and then it resolves. And when it resolves, people bury it. They don't tell their spouse. They don't mention it at their next doctor visit. They carry it silently because admitting you couldn't speak for a minute feels like admitting something is wrong with your mind. Here's the mechanism. Your brain's language processing lives in 2 regions of the left hemisphere. Broca's area produces speech. It's the region that turns a thought into a sentence. Wernicke's area comprehends speech. It decodes the words other people say to you. Both regions run on a continuous supply of oxygenated blood. When that supply drops, even for 20 to 30 seconds, the system doesn't slow down. It scrambles. What this looks like in real life. You're on the phone and the word you want, a simple word, a word you've said 10,000 times, will not form. Your mouth produces the wrong syllable, or no syllable at all. Or someone is speaking to you and their words hit your ears as pure sound, no meaning. Like listening to a language you've never heard. Then it clears, the connection comes back, and you tell yourself it was a senior moment. It was not a senior moment. There is no version of normal aging where your language system shuts down for 60 seconds and then reboots. That is a vascular event. That is blood flow. And pretending it didn't happen is the most dangerous thing you can do next. Arthur Pellegrino, 77, a retired auto mechanic from Chicago, sat in my office and told me something he'd been keeping to himself for 3 weeks. He was on the phone with his oldest grandson, a boy he helped raise, and he could not say the boy's name. Michael. He'd said it 100,000 times, but for about 15 seconds, the name would not come, just silence on the line. His grandson asked, "Grandpa, you there?" Arthur said, "Yeah, just lost my train of thought." He hung up. He sat in his kitchen alone, and for 3 weeks, he didn't tell a single person because he was terrified of what it might mean. When he finally told me, his hands were folded tight in his lap. He said, "Doc, I can fix any engine you put in front of me." But when I couldn't say my own grandson's name, I didn't know how to fix that. A carotid ultrasound that afternoon showed a 60% blockage in his left internal carotid artery, the vessel feeding the exact hemisphere where speech lives. 15 seconds of silence that told us everything we needed to know. If you experience a sudden disruption in your speech even once, even briefly, call your doctor that day. Say, "I had a sudden episode where I couldn't speak normally. I need a neurological and vascular evaluation." Do not wait for it to happen a second time. The first time is the warning. The second time might not be temporary. Now, the next warning sign doesn't whisper. It screams. And it arrives with a pain so sudden and so severe that most people remember the exact second it started. Warning sign number 3, a headache that hits without warning and feels like nothing you have ever experienced in your life. And the numbers behind this one are haunting. Clinical data shows that a significant percentage of patients who suffered a major hemorrhagic stroke reported an unusually severe headache 1 to 3 days before the event. 1 to 3 days. That is a window, a real, measurable window that most people close by, reaching for a bottle of aspirin and lying down. Here's the difference between this headache and every other headache you've ever had. A tension headache builds. A migraine announces itself with warning signs, light sensitivity, aura, nausea that creeps in slowly. This headache does none of that. It detonates. 1 second you're fine. The next second, a pressure so violent hits the inside of your skull that patients use the same phrase in emergency rooms across the country: the worst headache of my life. That phrase is so consistent that it has become a clinical red flag. When an ER doctor hears those exact words, it triggers a specific protocol. Here's the mechanism. A hemorrhagic event, a small bleed from a weakened blood vessel in or around your brain, releases blood into the space surrounding your brain tissue. That space is lined by the meninges, thin protective membranes, packed with pain-sensitive nerve endings. When blood touches those membranes, the pain response is immediate, explosive, and unlike anything you felt from a normal headache. It is your brain's alarm system firing at maximum volume. But here's the part that makes this warning so dangerous. The bleed can be small, a micro rupture, a hairline crack in a vessel wall, weakened by years of high blood pressure or chronic inflammation. The pain is enormous, but the bleed is tiny, so it stops on its own. The headache fades, and by the next morning, you feel fine. Saturday afternoon, her son found her unconscious on her bathroom floor, a ruptured vessel in her left posterior cerebral artery. Pearl survived, but the woman who woke up in the ICU 3 days later needed help eating, dressing, and reading the cards her friends sent her. She told me later, 3 days. He gave me 3 days to listen. And I didn't. You believe the worst is over. The worst has not even started. Pearl Hoffman, 70, a retired bookkeeper from Milwaukee, called her son on a Wednesday evening and said her head felt like it was going to split open. He asked her to go to the hospital. She said, "It's just a headache, sweetheart. I'll take something and go to bed." By Thursday morning, she felt better. Friday, she played cards with her friends. If you experience a sudden explosive headache, the kind that makes you stop everything and grab your head, especially if it comes with neck stiffness, vomiting, or sensitivity to light, go to the emergency room immediately. Do not take a painkiller. Do not sleep it off. Tell them. Sudden onset. Worst headache of my life. Those 7 words could save everything you have left. And here's where this video takes a turn, because the next warning sign doesn't attack your body. It attacks something deeper, something that makes you question whether you're still yourself. Warning sign number 2, your ability to think suddenly shuts down. And the data on this one touches the fear that every older American carries, but almost no one says out loud. Surveys consistently show that cognitive decline ranks among the top 3 health fears for adults over 60, above cancer, above heart disease. The terror of losing your mind, of not recognizing your own family, of becoming someone your children have to care for, it sits quietly in the back of every older American's thoughts. And that fear is exactly what makes this warning sign so dangerous. Because when it happens, people don't call their doctor. They hide it. Here's what it looks like. You're standing in your own living room, and suddenly the room feels unfamiliar. You look at a clock you've read every day for 20 years, and the numbers won't connect to meaning. Someone asks you a simple question: what did you have for breakfast? And your mind produces nothing. Not the wrong answer. No answer. A blank so complete, it terrifies you. Then, 60 to 90 seconds later, everything snaps back. You know where you are, you know the time, you remember the answer, and you spend the rest of the day pretending it never happened. Here's what I need you to understand. That was not dementia. That was not Alzheimer's beginning. That was your frontal and parietal lobes, the regions responsible for processing information, understanding space and time, organizing thoughts, being temporarily cut off from their blood supply. A small clot, a narrowed artery, a brief interruption that shut your highest cognitive functions off like a circuit breaker tripping in a fuse box. When blood flow resumed, the breaker flipped back. But the reason it tripped has not gone away. This is the warning sign. People bury deepest, not because it hurts, it doesn't. Because it humiliates. Because saying "I couldn't think out loud" feels like admitting you're becoming someone you swore you'd never become. So you carry it alone. You test yourself in private reading signs, doing arithmetic in your head, reciting names just to prove you're still you, and you tell no one. May Sullivan, 74, a retired elementary school teacher from Baltimore, sat in my office with her daughter beside her and could not get through the first sentence without crying. Her daughter reached over and held her hand. May finally said, "Dr. Pembrook, I was helping my granddaughter with her spelling homework, second grade words, and I looked at the word friend, and I didn't know what it said. 7 letters I've taught 1,000 children to read, and for 1 full minute, they meant nothing." Her daughter whispered, "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" May answered, "Because I didn't want you to start looking at me different." A vascular workup that week revealed significant stenosis in both of May's internal carotid arteries. 1 minute of silence over a spelling word was her brain's way of telling us that 2 of its major highways were failing. And she almost never mentioned it because the fear of what it might mean was louder than the warning itself. If this happens to you even once, I need you to fight through the fear and do the one thing that matters most. Tell someone, tell your spouse, tell your child, tell your doctor. You are not losing your mind. You are losing blood flow. And blood flow is something medicine can measure, can image, and can treat, but only if you speak up before the window closes. And now we come to the most important warning sign of all. The one I've been building towards since the first number I shared with you in this video. The one that connects every sign we've covered and the one your body is most likely to send first. And here it is, warning sign number 1. The sign your body is most likely to send first, the sign most people dismiss fastest, and the sign backed by the most overwhelming data in all of stroke research. A sudden, brief episode of numbness or weakness on one side of your body. The numbers are staggering. Clinical research shows that approximately 43% of patients who suffered a full stroke reported one-sided weakness or numbness in the hours or days before the event. 43%. Nearly half of every stroke patient had this exact warning, and the vast majority of them did nothing. Not because they didn't care, because they didn't know. Here's the science, and I want you to understand it completely. Your brain is divided into 2 hemispheres. Each hemisphere controls the opposite side of your body. Left hemisphere moves your right arm, your right leg, the right side of your face. Right hemisphere controls the left. When a clot, even one no bigger than a grain of sand, lodges in a blood vessel feeding the motor or sensory cortex of one hemisphere, the opposite side of your body loses function. Not gradually, not partially, instantly, like someone pulled the plug on one half of your body. Your right hand stops gripping while you're holding a coffee mug. Your left leg buckles halfway up the stairs. One corner of your mouth drops, and you don't even feel it happen. Then seconds later, maybe a minute, the clot dissolves. Blood flow resumes. Function return. And you do the most natural, most human, most dangerous thing possible. You shake it off. You blame the pillow. You blame the cold. You tell yourself the words that have preceded more strokes than any medical condition in history. It was nothing. It was not nothing. It was a transient ischemic attack. Your brain rehearsing the stroke that is forming behind it. A 30-second preview of what could become a permanent reality. And research shows that the risk of a full stroke is highest in the first 48 hours after thanks in advance. Not next month, not next year, the next 2 days. Let me tell you about a man named Eugene Kowalski, 75 years old, retired steelworker from Pittsburgh. Hands that had poured molten metal for 40 years. Eugene was eating dinner with his wife on a Thursday evening when his left hand let go of his fork. Not a fumble, a complete disconnect. His fingers opened and the fork hit the plate, and he sat there staring at his own hand as if it belonged to a stranger. It lasted about 10 seconds. He picked up the fork with his right hand, finished his meal, and said nothing. Friday morning, he was buttoning his shirt, and his left hand couldn't close around the button. 15 seconds. He switched to a pullover and drove to the hardware store. Saturday, he felt fine, mowed the lawn, watched the Steelers game, told his wife he'd never felt better. Sunday, 17 inches, the morning, his wife woke up to the sound of him falling out of bed. The entire left side of his body was paralyzed. The stroke had arrived 72 hours after the first fork dropped. Eugene survived 8 months of rehabilitation. He learned to walk again with a cane. He learned to write his name again with his right hand because his left never fully came back. He sat in my office 11 months later, a man who used to bend steel with his bare hands, and said something that silenced the room. Dr. Pembrook, I held a fork for 40 years without thinking about it. Now I think about it every single time. And every time I think about that, that is the cost of not knowing. 10 seconds, one fork, one decision to shake it off. That is all it took. So let me say this as directly as I have ever said anything to a patient. If you feel sudden numbness or weakness on one side of your body, in your hand, your arm, your leg, your face, even if it lasts 5 seconds, even if it vanishes completely, even if you feel perfectly fine afterward, do not shake it off. Do not finish your dinner. Do not wait until Monday. Pick up the phone and say these words. I experienced sudden one-sided weakness. I need emergency vascular evaluation. Those 14 words are the most important sentence you may ever speak. They are the difference between sitting in a doctor's office and lying in a hospital bed, between catching a 4-8 hour window and missing it, between telling this story yourself and having someone else tell it for you. The pattern is 3 words. One side, sudden, brief. Tape it to your bathroom mirror. Put it in your phone. Teach it to your spouse. Because the data is clear, nearly half of all strokes send this exact signal. And now you know what it looks like. That knowledge is worth more than any medication in any pharmacy in this country. But only if you use it. I opened this video with a number. Every 40 seconds, someone in America has a stroke. And up to 30% of those strokes were preceded by a warning that the person felt dismissed and forgot. Now you know what those warnings look like. All 7 of them. A sudden one-sided numbness that lasts a few seconds and vanishes, not a pinched nerve, not bad sleep, but a 43% correlation with a full stroke in the hours that follow. A moment of confusion so total that your own living room feels foreign, not dementia, not aging, but your frontal lobe losing blood supply. A headache that detonates without warning, not a migraine, but a possible microbleed from a vessel that may rupture within 72 hours. Words that vanish from your mouth mid-sentence. Not a senior moment, but a vascular event in the hemisphere where language lives. Vision that goes dark in one eye, not an eye problem, but a 15% stroke risk within 90 days, if ignored. Balance that fails you in a hallway you've walked 1,000 times, not clumsiness, but a cerebellum that just lost power. And a fatigue so sudden and deep that your body feels like it's been unplugged, not your age, but your brain rationing the energy. It's no longer receiving. 7 signals, each one backed by data, each one brief enough to dismiss, and each one a window that opens for hours or days and then closes permanently. I also gave you a number that should give you hope. When these warning signs are caught early and acted on, stroke risk can drop by as much as 80%. 80%. That number means that the difference between a catastrophic stroke and a prevented one often comes down to a single decision, the decision to pick up the phone instead of shaking it off. Here's what I need you to do before this week is over. 3 things. First, teach someone you love these 7 signs. Say them out loud, walk through them together. Because if one of these happens to you, you may not be the one who recognizes it. The person next to you needs to know what they're seeing. Second, put 5 words next to your phone. One side, sudden, call now. If anything on this list ever happens to you, those 5 words cut through the fear and tell you exactly what to do. Third, call your doctor this week. Ask for a vascular evaluation. Ask about your carotid arteries. Ask for a high sensitivity C-reactive protein test. Don't wait for a warning sign. The best window is the one you open before your body has to. I told you about Eugene Kowalski, 10 seconds with a fork that cost him 8 months of his life. I told you about Gloria Fitzgerald, 40 seconds of vanishing words from her late husband's letters. I told you about May Sullivan, 1 minute over a 2nd grader spelling word that she kept secret because the fear was louder than the warning. I told you about Pearl Hoffman, 3 days between a headache and an ICU bed. Every one of them had time. Every one of them had a window. The difference between their story and yours is that right now, today, you have something they didn't. The numbers, the signs, and the knowledge to act before the window closes. Don't waste it. I'm Dr. Walter Pembrook. I've spent 25 years in practice watching the same pattern repeat itself. Patients who had every warning, every signal, every chance to act, and missed it because the information never reached them in time. The healthcare system spends billions treating strokes after they happen. It spends almost nothing teaching you what a stroke looks like before it arrives. There is no billing code for the conversation we just had. No insurance reimbursement for 20 minutes of prevention through plain language. That gap is not an accident. It is a business model. And this channel exists to fill it. Subscribe to Dr. Walter Pembrook. Every subscriber is one more person the algorithm reaches, maybe the person who felt something strange this morning and hasn't told anyone yet. And if this video gave you something today, a number you didn't know, a sign you almost missed, a sentence to say to your doctor, send it to one person. Just one. Your spouse, your sister, your neighbor who lives alone and hasn't seen a doctor in 2 years. You learned 7 warning signs today. Sending this video takes 7 seconds. And for someone you love, those 7 seconds might be the difference between a window that opens and one that never does.